And the first question I got is, how can Chinese companies like Alibaba and Tencent, we have also seen Tencent, how can they adapt very fast to the changing and dynamic consumer behavior? So the assumption here is that Alibaba is adapting to changing consumer behavior. But my question would be, could it maybe be the other way around? So because you remember this slide we discussed, I think last week or the week before, where you have the three really big internet companies in China. Baidu for search engine, Alibaba mostly for e-commerce, and Tencent for games, but also social media. And they are competing with each other very fiercely. And as I explained last week, social media in China is really changing and innovating very fast because of these companies that are constantly competing with each other. It's not like China has one Facebook or one Twitter like we have in the West. There's normally, if something new arises, and normally in the beginning it's something that's copied from the West, especially a couple of years ago, then there's immediately tens or hundreds of companies doing the same thing and all trying to sort of win that market for themselves. So I think if you look at what happened in China, especially in the last 10 years, and you look at things like QR code scanning, O2O services, bike sharing, taxi hailing, e-commerce, m-commerce, they were all basically innovated and started by the internet companies. And what you see happening in China is that the consumers take up all of this new functionality and all of these new things very quickly. So I actually think that in the past 10 years, it's more the internet companies that innovate and thereby are changing consumer behavior than the other way around. So, at the same time, what you don't see happening, you don't see the state-owned enterprises innovating a lot. So it's really the privately owned internet companies that are doing this. If you look, for instance, at China Telecom, China Unicom, and what's the third one? Unicom, Telecom, and China Mobile. So they don't really innovate at all. If you look at the things they are doing, they are basically just continuing to offer the same things. As a matter of fact, when Tencent came out with WeChat, one of the mobile companies made an exact copy of that and tried to be very successful by offering that as well, but they failed just as most others have done. So it's really the private-owned companies, but there are a few certainties. The disposable income in China is continually rising, so people want to consume more, they can consume more, and the government is also stimulating the development of the service industry. One of the reasons for this is that eventually they will have to close down some of the state-owned enterprises, which are actually not making any money. They are costing money. And the government wants to create demand and thereby jobs in the service industry so that these people that are working in these state-owned companies, for instance in mining companies and stuff like that, they can start working in the service industry. So they're trying to rebalance that. Now, the internet companies, like I said, they've been the most innovative companies in China. And I think that they are more changing the consumer behavior than being led by consumer behavior. So that's why I said maybe it could be the other way around. They also spend a lot of money on market research. And Chinese people, like I said, are really into trying out new things. Much more than we do. They normally say about people in the West, we all want change, but nobody wants to change. Yeah. And in China, it's the other way around. They are so used to change. The change is so fast in the past 30 years that everybody is really used to a lot of fast-paced change, and they also like to try out all of the new things that are coming to them. If you just look at bike sharing, bike rentals that are taking place in China at the moment, it's been taken up so fast by the consumers. It's just something that would never happen here because we would always have a reason not to use something.
What do you mean by bike sharing?
Bike sharing, you basically nowadays in the big cities in China, you have bikes and you can scan the QR code on the bike and then you can ride the bike for as long as you want and just like park it somewhere.
The Vélib' in Paris.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing is that you don't have to park it like in a rack where it's sort of locked. You can leave it anywhere. That's also one of the problems of the system because...
How can you find it?
Via an app, yeah.
So you put the bike in front of the shop and when you come out there's no bike?
It could be gone, but there are so many other ones around. And it's not your bike. Although some people treat it as their bike because they take it inside and then they lock it and they don't have to pay anymore as soon as they lock it. So also still note that a lot of the initiatives of the internet companies are failing. Also, they try out a lot of things. So some things are not successful. But again, to wrap up the answer to this question, I think it's mostly the internet companies that are changing consumer behavior instead of the other way around.